Okay, we'll call this council meeting to order at 6 p.m. First, I need a motion for the adoption of the minutes, please.
Resolved that the minutes of the regular meeting of council held at City Hall on February 22nd, 2021 be adopted as circulated.
Moved by Councillor Espy and seconded by Councillor Buds. All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. Thank you. We have no delegations this evening, so we'll move right into hearings. We'll open the public hearing for conditional use PC-21. This is for PCRC at 236 and 238 Saskatchewan Avenue East. Is there anyone here to speak to the hearing?
Your worship, if I may.
Councillor Espy.
Councillor Espy, go ahead.
Thank you, worship. I am going to declare a personal interest, despite not having anything to gain one way or another from this particular vote. To avoid any perception of favoritism, I'm going to ask that I be recused.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Espy. Okay. Is there anyone here to speak to the hearing?
Hi there, I'm here to speak to the hearing. I'm just trying to turn my camera on.
Okay, great. And Kaylee, can you just state your name for the record?
Absolutely. My name is Kaylee Morrison.
Okay, thank you. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Okay, so good evening. I'm the Portage Community Shelter Coordinator, and I have come to the council meeting tonight to speak to PCRC's conditional zoning application for 236-238 Saskatchewan Avenue. For the past 8.5 months, the Portage Community Shelter has operated out of a house on Fisher Avenue. The space has worked well enough, but is far from perfect. The building is small and not physically accessible, which creates barriers for guests. The planning department was also clear that a residential zone was not the city's preference for a shelter, and that we should be actively working to relocate to the C2 zone. The building on Saskatchewan Avenue is a rare find. It meets the shelter's requirements. It is accessible for guests with mobility issues. It has 4 washrooms, including one with a shower. It has kitchen space, and there is enough square footage to comfortably accommodate guests and staff. It also meets the planning department's requirements as it is in the C2 zone. We've worked closely with the planning department and the fire department to ensure the building provides sufficient life safety for overnight guests. The shelter operates differently from a typical business on Sask Ave. The shelter is closed from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. every day when most retail businesses are open. Check-in time for guests is between 5 p.m. and 8 p.m. The main entrance to the shelter will be the back door of the building. This is to protect our guests' privacy and also to make use of the accessibility ramp at the back door. The front door facing Sask Ave will only be used as an emergency exit and will be otherwise locked with blinds drawn. The building comes with 3 parking spots, which is more than enough as only 2 staff work at one time and guests do not typically have vehicles. This particular block of Saskatchewan Avenue is not necessarily a retail thoroughfare, but could be considered a social service hub. Turning Leaf Support Services are next door, and Prairie Welcome House is across the street. It is also across the street from MCC Thrift Shop, which is a social enterprise that serves many of our guests. Portage Community Shelter will not be displacing a commercial business. This location formerly housed the CMHA Thrive Learning Center, another social service. Portage Community Shelter has received a huge amount of support from the business community in Portage. Point West, Shoefelts, and Dino's have all committed to donating goods and services to the shelter to open at this new location. Paramount Investments, the property owner, has supported us by providing a discounted rental rate and covering repairs and improvements to ensure the building is in top shape before we move in. We also recently ran the Coldest Night of the Year fundraiser and received sponsorship support from Southport Aerospace, Simplot, Portage Transport, Stride Credit Union, Rona, and Parfinco. PCRC is willing to work with local businesses to address any issues that come up regarding the shelter, and will share contact info in an introduction letter before the shelter opens. I hope that those present today will consider all the reasons that 236-238 Saskatchewan Avenue is an ideal location for the Portage Community Shelter. I'm happy to answer any questions the council may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Kaylee. Is there questions from council? Councillor Wall, go ahead.
Yes, Kaylee, just wondering, what length of time do you expect to use this location? Is it a long project?
We are hoping that it is a long-term project, but it is all dependent on the funding that we receive. So it's a little bit up in the air. We do have enough, we received enough funding from this end of the year that we're confident we can pay the rent on the space for at least 1 year, probably 2. And then after that, we'll see.
Thank you.
Councillor Draycott, you had a question?
Thank you, Your Worship. Hi, Kaylee. I had the privilege of reading through a couple of the objection letters that were submitted to council previous. And I know that some of the concerns through the objection letters that we've received is safety. And there are some other concerns within there, but I know the shelter has been put up in 2 different places now, and no business and no residents and no shelter can possibly be completely safe at all times with no concerns. But have there been any glaring concerns for the shelter so far?
I wouldn't say there are any glaring concerns. Obviously, you know, we're dealing with people who are at a low, so they may not be, you know, super happy and excited and easily falling in line. But I would say that the guests that we have served so far have been remarkably lovely. They are able to follow the rules. And when we have issues, we do have an alarm system that we use that can get RCMP there very quickly. And RCMP have been very helpful with us in the few times that we have had a bit of a problem. So I would say no glaring safety issues at all. Another thing that we do to sort of prevent these safety issues is that in our sort of rules, like our house rules for the shelter, we don't allow people who are intoxicated to stay at the shelter. And we also don't allow anyone who can't kind of comprehend where they are. So that reduces the amount of people who are maybe you know, not able to safely stay in the shelter.
Councillor Draycott, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Kind of a follow-up question to that. I know that previously the shelter has had house rules, as you say. So once you arrive at the shelter, are you at the shelter, or are you able to leave the shelter throughout the evening and come back?
Once you are in, you're in. We discourage the guests from leaving. This is partly just a logistical thing to make sure that their bed doesn't get given away. You know, it's first come, first served. So if you want a bed, you really have to be there on time and you have to stay. And then, of course, the other reason is to prevent people from, you know, showing up and then leaving and then perhaps, you know, using substances or contacting people who maybe they shouldn't be in contact with or that sort of thing. So we really try to prevent guests from going in and out because we do recognize that that's where the problems could occur, would be with guests coming in and out.
Councillor Meyer, you had a question?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. And Kaylee, thank you for presenting tonight. I actually have 2 questions. First question, and of course, not the business owners and the letter of objections notwithstanding. And I know we're talking about this location, but have there been any other locations considered? Is there anything else that would be on the map?
So I kind of mentioned this in my speech earlier. This building is a bit of a unicorn because we do know we have received you know, word from the planning department that C2 is the zone that we must be in. That was very clear that R1 is not the zone that the planning department wants us to stay in. So we need to be in C2. So that building meets that specific requirement. But then, of course, we also have a lot of requirements for people to comfortably stay at the shelter that aren't really met by most other commercial buildings in the C2 zone. For example, we looked at a property across the street and it didn't have a shower. It didn't have kind of separation. It would have just been kind of one big open space. We looked at another location in the basement of the post office, and that one had a shower and it was a slightly better space, but it's quite literally a Cold War era bunker. And so for fire safety and getting out easily, like easy exits, that wasn't going to be safe for our guests. So the space, the 236, 238 space is truly like a diamond in the rough. It's probably the only commercial space that's available right now that also has a shower, it has accessible washrooms, and it kind of works with what we're doing. So we have been searching for a space that meets all of the requirements, and this is the one that we've landed on.
Thank you for that. And then my second question, Your Worship, is you talk about obviously the location that you're in now, the rationale for moving to a new location is because of space and size. Where would that take what's your capacity now, and where would this new building take your capacity to?
So the capacity would be very similar. Right now, our current building has a capacity of 5 to 6. The reason that I say 5 to 6 is because we have one room that if there is like a family group, so a couple or like a parent and child or something, we do have an extra mattress that we can put in that room for them, so that raises our capacity to 6. But if we have, 5 single people, the capacity is 5. So this new space, the capacity would be about, well, I mean, definitely during COVID, the capacity would remain at 6. So it wouldn't be significantly higher capacity, but there is way more room to breathe. Right now, our shelter staff have a lot of trouble, keeping that 6-foot distance. There's also only one bathroom in the whole building. So the 5 to 6 guests and the staff are also sharing that bathroom. It's very tight in there. And the other issue too with the bathroom is that it's upstairs. So anyone who has mobility issues can't reach the bathroom in the current location, whereas in this location, it's all on one floor. There are 4 bathrooms, which is amazing. And one of those bathrooms does have like grab bars. So it is much more accessible than the one that we currently have.
Thank you for that. That's the end of my questions. Thank you.
Councillor Budge, you had a question?
Thank you, Worship. And I think most of my questions were answered. Thank you for the presentation. Just one thing, if you look at the letters of objections from businesses that are right in the immediate area, they're very similar in terms of their concerns. And if you were to address them, is there anything else that you would like to add that could mitigate that group of concerns, which are very consistent? I know your presentation has been to council, but if you were presenting to these 4 individuals, these 4 objections, is there anything you would like to add to help mitigate their concerns?
Well, I think the main thing, again, that I'll just stress is that we will be using the back door. I think a lot of the concern is kind of, having people out on the Ave and the sort of the look that would give off, and they're worried about, safety, that sort of thing. We will be using the back door only for guests coming in and out. The only reason that a guest would use the front door would be if there's like a big emergency and you have to evacuate. So I think that helps a little bit. And again, the parking too. I know that was a concern for a lot of those objection letters. And as I said, because we're only operating at night and because we only have 2 staff on at a time, the parking shouldn't be an issue. Finally, I do just want to mention that we work really closely with Prairie Welcome House, which is just across the street on Sask Ave. And they got their zoning done, I think it was 12 years ago, it was quite a while now. And there were concerns from business owners about the clientele and how that would affect the retail on that street. And there really haven't been any problems, you know. There are a couple of people outside Prairie Welcome House who will smoke occasionally, but generally they keep it clean and keep it nice. And that's what we're doing too, right? We really we encourage our guests to be kind and respectful and to respect the space. And we would be working to make sure that that happens while we're there. So I think that's the biggest concern, you know, the front facing, it's not going to be kind of like an extravaganza, open doors. Oh, hey, everybody come in, it's the shelter, in and out all the time. No, it's going to be very quiet. It'll be around the back. And again, with that smaller capacity right now with COVID, it's not going to be something like Main Street Project in downtown Winnipeg, where you have, you know, dozens and dozens of people using the space and dozens of people congregating. It's a much smaller population in Portage, and so much easier to kind of deal with and ensure that everything is safe and no one is causing any disturbances.
Thank you.
Councillor Knox, you had a question?
Yeah, thank you, Worship. Kaylee, can you speak a little bit to, I kind of did a little bit of research from reading some of these objection letters, and what I have found is in Canada, at least, the majority of shelters are in downtown corridors in communities. Can you speak to a little bit to what you were saying about accessibility for people where you are now and not knowing how to get there, etc.?
Yeah, absolutely. So as we are in a residential zone right now, it's not always obvious where we are. And we made a very conscious decision not to put up a lot of signage outside the house because, especially being in a residential zone, we didn't want to draw a lot of attention to the shelter. So that can be a bit of an issue. It is a little bit hard to find. Whereas a space on Sask Ave would be much easier to find. Again, it would be going in the back door, so it wouldn't be like flashing lights, you know, shelter this way, but it would be a little bit easier to find. And then also from that space on Sask Ave, it's very easy for our guests to then access those social services. So very easy for them to go next door to Trinity, very easy for them to go across the street to Prairie Welcome House, very easy for them to, we have a special relationship with MCC where our guests can shop for essential items for free. So very easy for them to accomplish all of those things. And I would say, yeah, all of the services that they're accessing, you know, the Department of Families building, the like banks, that sort of thing, they're all downtown. And so I think it makes a lot of sense. I understand why the planning department would like to have it in a commercial zone, because it just fits in with all of the other services that are available downtown. Whereas in a residential zone, not as much. You know, it's tougher to kind of make it really obvious, like put up signage, and it's tougher for people to find it.
Thank you.
Any further questions from council? I understand we've got 4 letters to read into the record.
Yes, we do. The first letter is from Wade Duncan, McDonald's Sporting Goods. Dear City Council, I wanted to express my concern regarding the conditional use application for an emergency residential shelter. While the concept behind the application is very important and worthwhile, I feel that a downtown business area is not the place for this shelter. Our city has taken steps to beautify the downtown area and create a thriving business district, and should proceed in this direction by encouraging more retail development. We will all benefit from more business diversification, and this will keep the downtown area vibrant. Clearly, there is a need for this service. I just believe that our main pedestrian and business area is certainly not the responsible place to put it. Regards, Wade Duncan, McDonald's Sporting Goods. The second letter is from Mayfair Print Shop, Karen Giffen. First, I would like to commend you for your move in the right direction regarding the lack of shelter and housing for the homeless population in our city. This is a serious issue that needs to be thoughtfully managed. With that being said, I, along with fellow neighboring business owners, have an issue with the proposed residential shelter within a commercial zone. My business is located at 208 Saskatchewan Avenue East, which is defined by city bylaw as a C2 central commercial zone. I understand that this definition includes residential land uses, but it is also my understanding that the proposed building is zoned as a commercial building. I am also aware of the many potential benefits of sheltering the homeless. However, I do believe that this location is not suitable for a transitional home for several reasons. It has been demonstrated in other cities that the presence of homeless people in a business district can reduce the capabilities of local merchants to operate and profit. In many cases, customers do not feel comfortable, affecting flow of foot traffic, making business locations less desirable for new and existing customers. In addition to concerns about property values and business disruption, the risk that presents of many emergency shelters might increase already spiraling drug use and crime rates is a real concern. Further, I believe that the people staying in this proposed shelter will feel out of place and on display in this high traffic downtown area. It is my hope that the board can propose another area to create a shelter within a residential zone. In addition to transitional homes, Portage has a great need for long-term solutions in order to move people out of emergency shelters and into more stable housing. This is something I hope that the city, along with our city council, will work to prioritize a solution. Respectfully, Karen Giffen, Mayfair Print Shop. The third letter is from Ian's Hardware at 220 Saskatchewan Avenue East. I want to make a few comments on the proposed conditional use of 236 and 238 Saskatchewan Avenue East. I feel that the Portage Community Revitalization Corporation, PCRC, has dropped the ball on this conditional use matter. They should have prepared an information letter stating their intentions and sent it out to the surrounding businesses. There are lots of questions to be answered and issues to be addressed. The PCRC needed to gain the support of the surrounding businesses first, then apply for a conditional use permit. There is no excuse for failing to inform us. Email works very well. In the last 2 years, a substantial amount of money has been invested in the area by the city for the replacement of the sidewalks, replanting of trees, and installation of benches and new lighting. The local merchants have made investments as well, some due to unfortunate circumstances, but they are back in business with the new and improved facilities. This is one of the prime retail areas in Portage. The city is growing, and at the same time, the selection of retail stores and restaurants will also be growing. The fact that you want to sacrifice 2 retail stores for a purpose that is not relative to the existing retail base requires some very careful thought. Rest of it certainly has the backing of the community. However, 100% of the surrounding businesses do not support the choice of location, and hopefully this will be taken into consideration. Thank you for your time, Ian Roberts. And the last one is from Derek McCutcheon at Off the Top. The permit to operate a downtown homeless shelter is something I disagree strongly with. Having participated in several downtown focus groups and studies, I do not recall ever once us not focusing on business and trade in our service corridor. I don't recall that we made any amends that would assist people in living their lives in a safe or reasonable fashion in this location. I believe we need to find a location at which they will not only have access to spend the night that is warm and safe, but as well as other amenities that would assist them with other necessary and required opportunities during the day. In these matters, when we have undertaken the renovations and improvements in our businesses, as well as you have improved our back lane and sidewalk, as well as increased our taxes by 60%, I don't see how this isn't going to impact us financially. We were told that downtown parking could not be ran at a negative, and I don't see how operating this in a prime downtown location is responsible. I don't perceive how it would be safe. I suspect the staff will need parking, and there are businesses that still require evening parking, such as the theater and the restaurants, as well as the Gillespie Center. My suggestion is that you provide an area designated for the vulnerable so that it can be policed appropriately, but allow them to have a sense of place in our community where the difference of finance and accommodation are not concerns. My suggestion is the women's jail, as there is space, showers, washrooms, and a courtyard, which are many of the amenities that would be required. Thanks for giving your concern to this need in our community, as we want everyone to be safe and warm at night. Derek McCutcheon off the top.
Okay, thank you. Need a motion to close the public hearing for conditional use PC 9-21, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Be it resolved that the public hearing for conditional use PC 9-21 for PCRC for 236, 238 Saskatchewan Avenue East now be closed.
Moved by Councillor Meyer and seconded by Councillor Buds. All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. Thank you.
Okay, Council, in front of you from the Planning and Economic Development Committee, as we've heard, we have a request for conditional use for file number PC 9-21. It's a request for conditional use from the Portage la Prairie Community Revitalization Corporation and Paramount Investment Corporation. The issue is to allow for an emergency residential shelter in a C2 central commercial zone. Our alternatives are to approve the conditional use as presented, or to approve the conditional use with conditions, or to deny the conditional use application. So the background, which I know you've heard a little bit of, but Portage la Prairie Community Revitalization Corporation, or PCRC, has applied for conditional use to allow for an emergency residential shelter in a C2 central commercial zone. Currently, we know it's not allowed in this existing zoning bylaw. However, I guess for future purposes, it is being considered as a conditional use in the proposed new zoning bylaw. Government services are a permitted use in this zone and are identified as being primarily engaged in providing general support services and other general government support establishments. The existing location that is being used for the emergency residential shelter is in an R1 residential single family zone, and it does or has to be discontinued as of March the 31st, 2021. So the new location, if you heard it, 236 and 238 Saskatchewan Avenue East would provide for a more long-term solution. The application was circulated to all of the city departments. The concerns were from the fire department and from the planning district regarding the life safety issues that were being addressed. So PCRC has made verbally aware that plans drawn by a qualified individual are to be provided to, PCRC has been verbally made aware. They've been made aware that the plans drawn by a qualified individual are to be provided for review to the Portage Planning District and the Portage Fire Department. These plans are to show how all life safety issues are going to be addressed in this building, and an occupancy permit would be required from the Portage Planning District before PCRC can use this building for the intended use. Public notices have been sent to all property owners within a 100-meter radius. You heard the objections as presented. So with that said, it's the administrative recommendation, and I so move that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie approve the conditional use application of Portage la Prairie Community Revitalization Corporation to allow for an emergency residential shelter in a C2 central commercial zone of the property 236, 238 Saskatchewan Avenue East, which is legally described as Lot 117, Plan 215, the Parish of Portage la Prairie, with the condition that all life safety issues are met to the satisfaction of the Portage Planning District and the Portage Fire Department.
Just need a second. We have a seconder, please. Motion. Councillor Buds, seconded by Councillor Buds. Any questions or comments on the motion? Councillor Wall?
Yes, I think PCRC's done an admirable job of sourcing a location that really fits their needs. I think Paramount Investment should be commended for supporting it with rent subsidies and upgrading the building. And I think they've thought all the permutations through, things like using the back door, etc., not encouraging people to leave and come back. And so I'll be supporting the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Wall. Other questions, comments on the motion? Councillor Draycott?
Thank you, Your Worship. I also agree that PCRC has done an excellent job, and the group that set up the shelter initially did do a lot of work. I agree, but we never ever looked at putting a shelter in our downtown corridor. And all of the times that we looked at what we were going to put in our downtown corridor, I don't remember it ever coming up. That being said, a couple years ago, we also heard that there was a need for a homeless shelter in our community. And before that, I don't remember anybody ever talking about it. I know that homeless people, vulnerable people, does not equate addict. It does not equate criminal any more than homed people equates addict and homed people equates criminal. I can say that I can appreciate that there may be extra needs for a homeless shelter. This is not a long-term transitional housing. This is a homeless shelter set up to help somebody get back on their feet short-term. They have done an excellent job of helping people in our community who are vulnerable. And I completely understand the not in my backyard sentiment from some of the businesses in the community that have presented objections. I do feel that Kaylee has done a good job this evening in giving information, sharing information about what those concerns, how they might be alleviated. And honestly, I can't think of a place in our community where you could say that's where a homeless shelter goes and it doesn't go anywhere else but right there. So I feel good and satisfied about the conversation that we had this evening during this hearing. And I do feel that I am willing to support this.
Thank you, Councillor Draycott. Other questions or comments from council? Okay, seeing none. Oh, Councillor Meyer?
Thank you, Your Worship. And I just want to state for the record that I've struggled with this a little bit. My thought coming in here tonight, Council, was that I was voting against the conditional use application for many of the reasons that our business owners did object to as well. Although upon hearing Kaylee's presentation, understanding the care and consideration they took into it, the backdoor access, and I really feel that it's led by good people that have the best interest at heart. Taking into consideration that we've got a number of other organizations, whether you talk about the Welcome House or MCC, I know they're a different setup, but a good solid community is comprised of so many different things. And I mean, this is one of those pieces of the puzzle. I just want to really encourage that, and I kind of changed my mind, but I want to encourage PCRC, who's ever looking after the shelter, to really communicate and work with these neighbors, because they are good people as well. And I think maybe they may misunderstand the situation, similar to what I maybe thought of a perception of what the situation was until I heard otherwise. So with that said, I will be voting in favor of the conditional use at this point in time, but I really don't want to see neighbors coming back, business owners coming back to council to complain about a situation that was misrepresented. I don't believe that'll happen, so I just really want to encourage you to really communicate with those business owners to exactly what's going on. And that's all I.
Thank you, Councillor Meyer. Any further questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. Thank you.
Sorry, did you call for the vote, Your Worship?
Yes, I did. Councillor Meyer.
I'm sorry. I'm still having connectivity issues.
Okay, the motion passed. The motion was carried.
Oh, good.
Could you ask Councillor Espy to rejoin us? Okay. Okay, we'll open the public hearing for variation PC 7-21. This is for Diggle at 40 Burns Bay. Is there anyone here to speak to the hearing? One more time, anyone here to speak to the hearing? This is for variation PC 7-21 for Diggle at 40 Burns Bay.
No one registered to speak, but there's one letter to read.
Okay, could you read that into the record, please?
I am Marshall and Diane Diggle's neighbor at 38 Burns Bay, and I fully support this plan. Thank you, Cheryl Redicher Rawson.
Okay. Okay, need a motion to close the public hearing for variation PC 7-21, please.
Be it resolved that the public hearing for variation PC 721, Diggle, 40 Burns Bay now be closed.
Moved by Councillor Meyer and seconded by Councillor Buds. All those in favor? And that's carried.
Okay, in front of you, council, once again from the Planning and Economic Development Committee for file number PC 7-21. This is a request for variation from Marshall and Diane Diggle. The issue is to vary the required front yard setback of 7.5 meters to be reduced to 5 meters. As always, there are alternatives to approve the variation or to deny the variation. So Marshall and Diane Diggle are applying for a variation order to allow the required front yard setback of 7.5 meters to be reduced to 5. What they wish to do is to construct a 3 meter by 3 meter deck on the front of their house. In the past, RM Council has approved similar requests that varied the following. You'll see that there's 3 minutes there for your reference. The building is currently in an R1 residential single family zone. The application has been circulated to various city departments. There have been no concerns. There have been no objections and 1 letter in support. So it's the administrative recommendation, and I so move that the council of the city of Portage la Prairie approve the variation request of Marshall and Diane Diggle to vary the required front yard setback of 7.5 meters to be reduced to 5 meters to construct a 3 meter by 3 meter deck at the property known as 40 Burns Bay, which is legally described as Lot 42, Block 1, Plan 1721 in the parish of Portage la Prairie.
Moved by Councillor Meyer and seconded by Councillor Buds. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. Thank you. We'll move into committees. First up is Finance, Legislative Property Committee. Councillor Buds, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Your committee has nothing to report.
Thank you. City Planning and Economic Development Committee, Councillor Meyer.
Thank you, Your Worship. The City Planning and Economic Development Committee has nothing further to report.
Thank you. Community Services Committee, Councillor Draycott, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Nothing for community services at this time.
Thank you. Councillor Wall, Waterworks Committee.
Yes, Your Worship. Every year at the Water Pollution Control Facility, twice a year actually, we remove residual solids from the system that are accumulated as a result of primary and secondary treatment of the wastewater and apply it to farmland as a soil amendment and fertilizer. A detailed report summarizing the annual land application of biosolids program is required to be submitted to Manitoba Conservation and Climate as specified in license 1907R. The attached report includes all relevant information, including soil conditions of the land in which the biosolids was applied, properties of the biosolids material from the biosolids storage tanks, as well as the bulk volume fermenter, as well as application rates for nutrients and metals to ensure compliance with the license. The 2020 land application of biosolids program was successful with 904 dry tons of material being injected into farmland on 2 different partial sections of land within the RM of Portage la Prairie. Compliance with all aspects of the license were achieved and there were no spills or concerns to be addressed. The recommendation is, and I so move, that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie accept the Wastewater Treatment Division Land Application of Biosolids Report as presented and authorize the submission to Manitoba Conservation of Climate as well as posting on the city's website.
Moved by Councillor Wall and seconded by Councillor Knox. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. Thank you. Transportation Committee, Councillor Espy, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Transportation Committee has nothing to report.
Thank you. And Public Safety Committee, Councillor Knox.
Thank you, Your Worship. Your Public Safety Committee has nothing to report tonight.
Thank you. We have no deferred business this evening. However, we do have some items of new business. First item is the WPCF upgrading status, and this is for Information and Waterworks Committee. Councillor Wall, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is for information only. Tasks undertaken since late January regarding the Portage la Prairie Water Pollution Control Facility upgrading project include receiving the project funding agreement for the non-ICIP eligible costs from Manitoba Strategic Initiatives and Alternative Delivery, formerly Manitoba Sustainable Infrastructure Secretariat. The ICIP agreement has not yet been received. The utility maintenance shop request for contractor qualifications and design build request for proposals documents continue to be developed, and this will be partially funded under the ICIP program. The project agreement and request for proposal documents continue to be developed. Project payment mechanisms, options, and industrial service agreements, cost-sharing approaches are being considered. It's intended to issue the RFP in March. Discussions regarding industrial wastewater treatment requirements continued. AECOM is continuing to work on developing a basic odor dispersion computer model to enable criteria to be set for maximum odor limits at the site, adjacent to the site, and in nearby residential areas of the city. Tasks over the next month will include reviewing and proposing amendments to the ICIP funding agreement, if received, finalizing the scope of work for the requested proposals and the project agreement, preparing the odor dispersion model, issuing the RFQ and DB tender for the utility maintenance building, and compiling additional historic documents and wastewater characterization documents to be made available to the proponents. And that's my report, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Wall. Next item of new business is the award of engineering services for Saskatchewan Avenue West for the design and contract administration. And this is transportation. Councillor Espy, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. The issue is to award the contract for pre-design of the upgrading of Saskatchewan Avenue West, as you indicated. The City of Portage la Prairie issued a request for proposals for consulting services for design and contract administration of Saskatchewan Avenue West upgrades. The scope of work includes completing the design work started in the previous pre-design project, developing tender documents, and contract administration. The redeveloped roadway would include a 4-lane divided road, median turning lanes, bicycle lanes, asphalt surface, concrete curb and gutter, boulevards, improved drainage, aesthetic/architectural surface improvements, defined parking, sidewalks, and improved pedestrian and cyclist access and safety. The project will also include replacing the existing sewer and water lines with drainage outfalls to Crescent Lake. The proposed timeline would have construction completed in 2024. The request for proposal closed on February 25th, 2021. 3 proposal packages were sent out and 3 proposals were received. The proposals were evaluated according to the policy ENG-F with scoring as follows. Stantec Consulting Limited, total fees of $2,105,169.50 at 92.5 points. KGS Group at $2,100,000 at 92.4 points. WSP Canada Group Limited, $2,845,059 at a score of 85.7 points. Stantec and KGS both had excellent proposals that went into detail on how they would approach the project and provide additional value, and both had highly qualified personnel. WSP also had a good proposal, as indicated in the table, and fees for Stantec and KGS were extremely close. The Stantec's fees included additional hours, which gave them a slight advantage in the total score. The evaluation was based on the total project, but it will be awarded in 2 contracts, with phase 1 contract to begin immediately and the phase 2 contract to be awarded on the confirmation of grant funding. Stantec's proposed phase 1 cost is $386,792.50 plus taxes, which includes an estimated $67,345.10 in disbursements. This is less than the amount budgeted of $453,840 and allows for possible changes that could come up during the project. It is the administrative recommendation, and I so move, that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie award the phase 1 contract for engineering services for Saskatchewan Avenue West design and contract administration to Stantec Consulting Limited for the upset limit price of $386,792.50 plus taxes.
Moved by Councillor Espy and seconded by Councillor Wall. Any questions or comments on the motion? You had a question, Councillor Meyer?
No, must have been a delay. I was actually seconding the motion, Your Worship.
Oh, okay, thank you. Then Councillor Wall, you had a question?
Just a comment, Your Worship. Having been involved in evaluating engineering proposals in the past, I know the hours of work that go into evaluating these proposals in detail, and the points awarded are awarded to all different portions of the proposal except the financial portion, which is open to last after everything else has been scored and awarded points. So the one doesn't affect the other. So I think this looks like a good recommendation, and I'll be voting in favor of the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Wall. And Councillor Budge, you had a question?
Thank you, Your Worship. Managerial recommendation is to go with Stantec, and we just heard from Councillor Wall about kind of what goes through or what's done during the evaluation process. Wondering is the possibility of an engineering firm being in any state of litigation with the city or any of its partners included in the evaluation point scoring?
I could answer that, Your Worship.
Thank you.
Through Your Worship, to Councillor Budds, when we consider eligible bidders, primarily the concern is that they have qualified personnel and experience in the field. There's not consideration on ongoing litigations on project. If they're considered qualified bidders with the experience in the field, they are an eligible bidder.
Thank you.
Further questions or comments on the motion? Okay. All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. Thank you. That is all of our items of new business. We have no old business this evening. So council is adjourned at 6:48 p.m. and we're going to move right into committee. We'll call committee to order at 6:48 p.m. First up is Finance, Legislative and Property Committee. Councillor Budds, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Your committee has nothing to report.
Thank you. City Planning and Economic Development Committee, Councillor Meyer.
Thank you, Your Worship. The City Planning and Economic Development Committee has nothing on committee tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Meyer. Community Services Committee, Councillor Draycott, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't have anything on the agenda, but saying that, I would like to invite Miss Victoria Espy from PCRC to our meeting this evening and wish her a happy International Women's Day.
Thank you. You took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to wish everybody a happy International Women's Day and a big shout out to our two lovely councilwomen who are very inspirational to our community. I do want to make mention that today, March 8th, is International Women's Day. However, we are holding an event, PCRC in partnership with Central Plains Cancer Care, Military Family Services, and the Portage Chamber of Commerce. We partner every year on an International Women's Day event, and this year is no different. So on Friday, March the 12th, we are having an online event on Zoom where we have a local speaker, Adrian Hofer, who was the 2020 Entrepreneur of the Year, will be opening the evening. But then the planning committee is bringing in comedic motivational speaker Jody Urquhart, who is extremely funny and super captivating. This year's event is free for the community. It was something we felt very passionate about with offering this year for free after the year that we have had. So we really encourage anyone who is interested to please register for the event. It starts at 6:30 on Friday night, and the links can be found on all of our social media pages, PCRC's, the Chamber, Central Plains Cancer Care, and Military Family Services. And this year's theme is #ChooseToChallenge. So a challenged world is an alert world. Individually, we're all responsible for our own thoughts and actions all day, every day. That is our theme, and we're very excited to host this event. So please register. We'd love to see you there, and happy International Women's Day to our community. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for the information. We'll see you on Zoom on Friday. And Your Worship, that's all I have for this evening.
Thank you, Councillor Draycott. Waterworks Committee, Councillor Wall, please.
Yes, Your Worship, a number of reports coming forward to be presented to council at the next meeting, and then if passed, to be forwarded to different provincial departments that oversee water and wastewater. The wastewater division annual report, the public water system annual report. There's been a tremendous amount of activity at both the water plant and the wastewater plant and over the last year, and both have operated with great success and overcome all the problems presented to them and come up with wonderful results. I'd like to commend the operators and Carly for the wonderful job they've done in wastewater and water treatment in our community to keep us all healthy and disease-free, and encourage everybody to have a look at these reports. A lot of interesting data in there about the millions of liters of wastewater we treat, how much water we supply, not only to Portage la Prairie, but to the region, how much water we use in the treatment of water. We actually consume some water in the treatment of our water. So have a look at these reports and review them, and they'll come forward for your approval at the next meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Wall. And Transportation Committee, Councillor Espy, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Transportation Committee has nothing to report.
Thank you. Councillor Knox, the Public Safety Committee, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Nothing from Public Safety this evening.
Okay. The committee is adjourned at 6:53 p.m. Thank you for coming out, everybody.